Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Tosin Jagede. Again, I want to make an attempt to make sense from the information that we have about COVID-19. And I also want to try and see if the world over, if we are actually taking the right approach. This video is based on the information I've gathered from speaking to people, listening to news, listening to opinions on radio and television, on the internet, and also doing some research into the history of pandemic, the recent history of pandemic. Now, I have maintained in most of the videos released by myself on this issue that COVID-19 is a smart virus and will require smart approach if we must generally win this virus. I've also said that panic responses may not be the right answer to this virus. Those are my personal views about the virus. Now, I also want to start by saying that we need smart communication. It's better we communicate correctly so that the entire world will understand what we are into. And when you ask the citizen to do a particular thing, this is speaking directly to those in government, those that speak for government, especially those that are in the task forces in the state and the federal government concerning COVID-19. I think some of the informations or the words we use might be a little bit confusing and might be the reason why we are not getting enough compliance. Now, let's take a look at the following word that is used and phrases. Let's look at the word like isolation, quarantine, outbreak, epidemics, and pandemic. Now, isolation. Now, isolation is a process where you separate a sick person that is contagious from other people that are not sick. Now, we have isolation centers already. So anybody that is taken to that center is isolated for the purpose of removing them from those who are not sick. Now, so anybody that is in that center should be symptomatic. So you are sure that this person has COVID-19 and should be separated from others. So that's important for us to understand that. Now, these are the places where I think we get it wrong. Now, quarantine, this is you're separating or you restrict the movement of a people who were exposed to a dangerous disease to see if they become sick. These people may have been exposed to the sickness and do not know it, or they may have the diseases but do not show symptoms. Now, so when we are talking about lockdown, especially in Nigeria, I think those in charge are not using the right words and they are not using it correctly. Now, when you are talking about lockdown and you are talking about social distancing, these are not words that goes together. Now, quarantine is that a people that are suspected to have had contact with somebody who is infected, then you can quarantine those people to see if they will come down with sickness or if they will show symptoms of the sickness. So what is currently going on in, for instance, Lagos, Abuja, and Ogun State is quarantine. The state has been quarantined. So lockdown is necessary to enforce this quarantine process. So we have, that means that we are suspecting that most people who stays in that environment may have had contact with people that are COVID-19 positive. Now, for us to be sure, we want to quarantine you, keep you in a place, and watch you if you will come down with that sickness so that we can take action. So it is important that we know this, that quarantine, social distancing may not necessarily mean the same thing. So social distancing and quarantine may not necessarily mean the same thing, and we must be sure that we are releasing the right information to the people out there. Now, outbreak, when there is a sudden rise in the number of cases of a certain disease. So you say there is an outbreak. Now, epidemics, similar to outbreak, but generally considered larger and more widespread. So you have an epidemic when the outbreak is large and the spread is also wide. Then pandemic is larger than epidemics, generally global in nature and affect more people. So what we are experiencing right now with COVID-19 is a pandemic because it's affecting almost everybody across the world. So what we have is a pandemic. Now, let's look at the history of pandemic. Now, I will not bore us too much with the history of pandemic. We have a lot of HIV and AIDS. It's a pandemic that killed between 25 and 35 million people. Then we have the third plague, which took the life of about 12 million people. We have the smallpox plague that happened in 1520. That's also was a pandemic. We also have the Spanish flu that occurred between 1918 and 1919. That killed between 20 and 50 million individuals. There are a lot of pandemics like that, but I want to take the one in recent history, which is the pandemic. They call it the flu pandemic, or you can call it the Spanish flu. It happened in 1818. It killed almost 50 million people within the time frame. It was a pandemic. So I want to look at what was the reaction towards this particular pandemic that took about 50 million people. Now, it's caused by the influenza virus, and it killed between 20 and 50 million people, like I said earlier. It happened between 1918 and 1920. It is a disturbing, deadly outbreak of influenza tore across the globe. It went across the globe almost everywhere. It affected 500 million people, about a quarter of the world population at that time. So the number of people that it affected was a quarter of the world population at that time. That means you can estimate that the world population at that time is about 2 billion. So we have about 2 billion people, and this particular outbreak affected a quarter of them. That's when we are trying to make comparison between COVID-19 and this particular flu. You will understand what I'll be saying at that time. Now, what is the world population today? What is the world population at the time that this particular flu happened? Now, we can't win COVID-19 using the strategy of 1918, obviously. Now, these flyers are the things that was put out there in 1918. Now, prevent disease, careless spitting, coughing, sneezing, spread influenza. Then cough, sneezing, spread diseases. So those are the information that were out there in 1918, which is actually similar to what we have today. Now, we also have churches, schools, shows closed. Epidemic put ban on all public assembly. Now, you also have this other flyer that says all theater closed until further notice because of this same virus, this same epidemic of 1918. Everywhere shut down, just like we are shutting down everywhere now today. America and French. So this is what it was on the news in 1818. Now, what we are seeing today, and this is what actually worries me, what we are seeing today is a replica of that which they saw in 1918. Is exactly the approach of today, is the approach of 1918. Now, let me explain to us the difference between today and 1918. And that's why we say the COVID-19 of today is smart. Now, in 1918, there were no aircrafts. There were no commercial flights. In 1918, because the First World War ended in 1918, and at that World War, aircraft was not even used to fight the war. Now, the mobility at that time is either by rail or by sea. The international trade is not as prominent as we have today. Now, you can actually stay in a small town in 1918 and execute your business without getting to the next town, which is practically impossible today. Today, we already have the internet and the Internet of Things. Today, we have aircraft everywhere, airports everywhere, people traveling. Moving from one point to the other today has become faster. Now, it's not what we used to have in 1918, meaning that if you use the approach of 1918 to combat COVID-19 of 2020, you will most likely fail. You will most likely fail. This approach worked in 1918 when the world population was less than 2 billion. Now you will not use the same approach in a world population that is over 7 billion. You will also not use the same approach and expect the same result when the fastest means of traveling was by rail, and rail that are extremely slow with a very weak technology. You will not compare that with now. So it is important for those people handling this virus to understand that yes, the flu of 1918 was a pandemic. COVID-19 is also a pandemic. However, the circumstances surrounding the world at that time is different from what we have now. So we need to start looking inward. We need to start understanding our present circumstances. It's easier to lock down at that time because first, the population is not much. Number two is that people we have not crossed border. The world has not become a global village at that time. Today, we have crossed border. Today, the world has become a global village. Today, it's practically impossible for a country to sustain, to exist without the other. So now we need to think outside the box. We need to look at what they did in 1918 and try to come up with a better option even now. Now, let's look at the word social distancing, and let's look at it. So I call it social distancing versus physical distancing. Now, in 1918, social distancing and physical distance can be used interchangeably without misinforming the public. Because in 1918, you must have physical contact to have social interaction. That's in 1918. But can we say the same thing for 2020? So in today's world, that's in 2020, social distancing is practically impossible. You can practically keep people apart in 2020, and I will explain so that people don't misunderstand me. Now, when you interact with people on the social media, it's called social interaction. When you interact with people through the means you are seeing me now, I am interacting with you through the social media, either through the YouTube or any medium whatsoever. You are interacting, and that cannot stop. The internet and the Internet of Things have changed the phrase, they have redefined the phrase social distancing. So we cannot be talking about social distancing in this age and time. Now, what is possible and what we should be advocating now is physical distancing. That if you must be in a place where people are, or where it's more than only you, keep a distance. That's physical distancing. That's practically different from what the term social distancing. So you see it everywhere now, people talking about social distancing when you're talking about the virus. But however, it is impossible to keep people socially apart in this age and time. We are dealing with a smart virus. It is better for us to have smart understanding of how to deal with this virus. Now we are also talking about lockdown. You are locking down, like I said in my other videos, I believe that lockdown is a panic approach. Yes, it's a solution. No doubt about that. Panic approach is a solution. Lockdown is a solution, but I call it an impracticable solution. It is practically impossible to lock down the entire world and make them sit at home for, let's say, 30 days, so that we can be sure that we have completely quarantined the world. Now, when we are talking about lockdown, we are talking about quarantine. So you cannot, it's practically impossible to quarantine an entire world. Now, if you are able to quarantine the world, then in 30 days, you can get rid of this virus. But because it is practically impossible because of the time we are in to quarantine an entire world, it may be an impracticable solution. Now, if that is an impracticable solution, we should start to look at other means. And this is my own input to it, which I've said before: effective communication. Like I've explained, we need to tell people effectively. For instance, in Nigeria now, it is more effective to tell somebody that, guy, if you go out and you don't observe physical distance and you contact the virus, you may be killing your entire family. Now, if you contact the virus and you go back home, you may infect your wife, infect your kids, infect your other relatives, and you may entirely be the source of eradicating your entire generation. That is a message that will likely resonate with an average Nigerian. But when you tell an average Nigerian that stay home, if you go out, you may die, if you don't let him see the effect of what it's going to do on his relative. Now, we Nigerians naturally have some attachment. In fact, sometimes we tend to be ready to risk a lot of things as long as our family will not be involved. So we need to rearrange our ways of communicating. Also, we need to go back to what we used to do. Local government should be effectively involved, especially in Nigeria, so that local governments can be involved in breaking down these messages into languages that people understand. While I was growing up on issues like this, you see the local government put a megaphone on a vehicle and going from street to street every morning and in the evening. Now, we should see that come back again, where local government puts megaphones on the vehicle and moving around the streets in their local government to educate the people on what to do, how to keep physical distance, how to operate with proper hygiene, and what to do if you notice a certain symptom. Almost everybody around the world must know what to watch out for with COVID-19. That if you are feeling this, and this symptom, this is what you are supposed to do. Now, when you have done all that, another thing that is important that the world should look closely at is making testing kits available all across the world. For instance, in Nigeria, we should work towards having testing kits in every health center. Now, it's not impossible, it's difficult. In fact, it is easier to do this than to quarantine the entire nation. It is easier, in my view, to make testing available at the health center across Nigeria than to quarantine the entire nation. Now, another way of doing it is this: shutting down churches, shutting down schools. We end because you shut down churches, you shut down schools, but the markets are open. Now, there are as much crowd in the churches, in the mosque, in the schools as you have in the market and in the mall. Now, what will I advocate? I will advocate that everybody make it a law that anybody that must go to any public place must be wearing a face mask, a nose mask. Let everybody go out with a mask. So if you must be in a church and a church must operate or a mosque must operate, let them have a tank of water and soap by their gate and ensure that every one of the worshiper washes their hands before they enter the compound. Also ensure that nobody goes into those services without their face mask. Meaning that even if you have people that are infected that are attending those church services on that day, if they have the face mask on, they will protect others. Now, why can't we look at that approach where we can keep going, our life can keep running While we are waiting for vaccines, while we are waiting for drugs that can take care of this, we cannot shut down an economy until there is a solution. We all know by the scientists that it may take 18 months for clinical trial of any drug that will be administered. It may take even more than a year to have a vaccine. So we will not continue to shut down our economy. It is important to think outside the box. Let's begin to bring in solutions. If you must be in the public place, let's government make, if you government can push out face masks at a subsidized rate and make it a compulsion that you must be in a market, you must be in a shopping mall, you must be wearing your face mask. So that while we are doing our businesses, you want to be in a public transport, in a bus, it must be compulsory that you must be sanitized, sanitize your hand, and also wear a mask while you are seated in the bus. Let the security agent on the street make sure this is complied with. Let there be fine for anybody that does not do this. And when you know you don't want to wear a face mask, then go out. With this, we can keep living our life while we find lasting solution. We will not be getting anything by shutting down the system while we are waiting for solutions. This is my view, and this is the sense I can make from this, and I hope this is going to be beneficial. Thank you. If you like what you have heard, if you like my view, please share this view with others. Thank you.